what is defined in the settlement agreement. You have this opportunity to take advantage of your position, because I feel like the PSEP members are really naive to think that police reform is the solution. That's not the outcome. Police reform is not only the problem, it's a systemic issue. It could be that from the youth, detention centers, they're a pipeline to prisons. The gang enforcement task force, they are gangs members themselves. They're part of their own kind of gang. They have the authority now to profile people of color and other areas. There's for-profit prisons. The unions are protecting the police. If there is a lethal force, the police are able to get immediate representation, and they are supported in every facet of their employment. And now, we've had this discussion for 40 years and there has been no change. And we won't see any changes unless the system has been dismantled or rebuilt.
Right. We're going to cut it right there.
It's a consideration that we consider the violence. You know, we're not talking about police behavior and police violence. There are violent police officers that we can discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. These are our last two folks that will present.
Hello, so my name is David Denos, and I'm a rogue Canadian who found his way here by accident at the hands of Philip. So I wanted to commend Dennis over here for presenting the data in a way that's very favorable to the Portland Police Bureau. I want to direct everybody's attention to this kind of biased framing of the data, specifically of the percentage of lower rates of force, and the comparing specifically to US localities. The percentage of lower rates of force, his quotes, is patterns and not outcomes. And that's a very academic way of looking at things, and that's also a very problematic way of looking at things. I'm also an academic. I've been studying years at the University of British Columbia on the implementation and the historical and contemporary laws around colonization and ongoing genocide, specifically in Canada, but also in the US. And academia plays a huge role in the furthering and the implementation of genocide, specifically in the acceptance by using and manipulating statistics and policy, specific statistics and numbers to present itself in a favorable way to the institutions that execute those genocidal policies. So effectively what's happening is, everything that I've seen here from a glance is it's really great at putting administrative tasks with no real structural reform. And the two really big areas of genocide is bureaucracy and academia. Academia for the acceptance, and the bureaucracy for ensuring that there's difficulties for the people who are struggling with the system to be able to get through it. And so we're seeing no structural reform. Things like adding trainings is not a structural reform. It is the using of favorable looking policies in a way that enhances the structures to continue exacting its devastating violence on communities. And so we're ignoring that structural violence through the use, like what's being discussed is ignoring totally the use of violence through the use of power. And power is not force. Power is everything from clothing, to training, to tools and weapons, to the language that's used, to where police officers stand, they walk, how they engage with community members. All of that is power, and we haven't even touched on that. And so the role of policing within community engagement, there's the issue there. Structural reform would not look at trainings within that. It would look at changing what the action of policing looks like. Within communities themselves, police officers are not meant to be police officers. They're meant to be members of a community that help maintain and support and protect that community. So separating that is a way that academics further and promote the use of genocide and violence against communities. And I'm using the term genocide very clearly here because the US refuses to use that term, and it's ridiculous. There are thousands, and I'm not mincing words, thousands of active genocides going on right now. So my and comparing to US cities specifically, we can't just look at US cities. US is pardon my words here, a shit stain on the world in terms of police violence. The US is not something to compare it to. Looking at US cities and saying Portland is the best model, it's saying it's the best model of number something like 200 in the world in terms of police violence. It's ridiculous. Why are we not looking at other countries around the world? Why are we not looking specifically at communities that do not use policing models? and engaging with them and understanding how communities work without the use of policing law, because they exist all over the world, in every country in the world, in communities everywhere. So my recommendation to you, Dennis specifically, is to please, please, please evaluate your data so that they are presented and they think outside of the Americentric bubble. You think outside of that American bubble that makes it look like violence is what we need and makes it look like policing is a standard use of community engagement. And for everyone, I would urge everyone to be keen, please be keen on seeing where that structural bias is in the data that is presented, because the data that has been used here was manipulated and was used to advance specifically the narrative of ensuring the continued support and the continued foundational existence of police here, which is ridiculous. So please, please, please reevaluate your data. Oh, and it's David Danos from Canada.
Thank you, David from Canada. Last but not least.
Hello, Vanessa Perone, Alexis' mom. There's a lot of passion and compassion there. Thank you for what you've said. First off, my understanding is supposed to be a peace officer. That is not what I see. I see a lot of, this is just because I am houseless, I am on the streets, and Alex and I have seen and dealt with a lot. So there are a lot of crooked cops, and there's a lot of gang members that run the streets. There's a lot of mentally ill that roam them. It's sad. These sweeps, bad. It is causing more stealing and more violence than anything. We've been trying to attend a lot of meetings to gain a lot of insight from all of you, and I'm sure there's a lot of compassionate people here, and that's why we're here. We want change, we want better. And it starts with an area. Let's give us space that is safe so that we don't have to have so many mentally ill just roaming around, that they can get help. And then the ones that actually want to get off the streets don't have to worry about their shit getting stolen, police coming by and harassing. The same police, like my daughter said, that's the problem, is you have the same police officers, they're in the same areas. They are building relationships with a lot of the wrong people and allowing a lot of the wrongdoings. So the surveys, never seen it. I don't know why they're not in community buildings. You know, why aren't they at TPI, CCC, library, you know, all the places that these mentally ill and houseless people are? I've never seen them, never heard about it. We need to have street advocates, peers like us, good people that are out here, actually ones to help engage, because we know these people, you know, so they're more comfortable to come up to us, and maybe we can help them move forward easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Do you have room for one more comment?
Very quickly, yep.
Okay. I won't be as long as some folks, but I'll take more than a minute. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to read this because it's a little hard.
Use the microphone, please.
Yep. Oh, sorry. And I'll say my name in just a second. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'd like to thank the PSEP for welcoming the community, and thank Dr. Rosenbaum for his presentation and feedback.
Just speak in the microphone, please. Yeah.
My name is Sara Carlson. I'm a community member of the Portland Police Bureau Training Advisory Council, or TAC, since January, so I'm a new member. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had to attend trainings and the willingness of the officers to meet with me so I can learn more. And I hope over time to share my insight with them. I'm also a community member who struggled with mental health challenges. I had a mental health crisis in 1986, just before my 15th birthday. I was a runaway. The police did find me after about a week. I spent 60 days in a psychiatric hospital being treated for depression. I've had some challenges as an adult, and I've also been impacted as a family member. And I share this because I imagine I might have an opportunity to connect with some of you. I'm finally in a position where I'm comfortable to start sharing my story in the hope that I might help others, and it's taken me 35 years to be ready to do that. At the time that I was in my crisis, my father was a Navy captain. He was commanding a destroyer, and he was at sea. They actually wanted to send me to long-term, but we were moving, so I got out, and the next day we moved. And although I was in treatment for years, we never spoke of it again. So, you know, so I hope that by sharing my story as an adult, who doesn't have to worry about my job or a security clearance or a lot of other things, I can maybe help. I can help some teenager who's struggling, or you know, we had good insurance. My family, although I didn't believe that they loved me, they fought for me, and not everybody has those advantages. So I just share that because somebody here might need to hear that. But I do have questions about the agreement for Dr. Rosenbaum. Do you, for your write-up, do you have some best practices or insight to share for organizations that have been successful following the end of a settlement? And then also, if you see organizations that haven't been successful, and this might not be the right term, I apologize for that, what are they doing or not doing? Because that might be something that we as community members or members of the Training Advisory Council or this organization can also use for our learnings to inform going forward.
We're not going to have Dr. Rosenbaum respond. Just
No, he's going to write it.
Yeah, perfect.
But yeah, I just want to ask my question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but I wanted to share a little bit about me and why I do this, because I think that's important.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And what was your name again?
Sara Carlson. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate all the testimony and feedback from the community members. That was really impactful. If I could see our co-chairs of our subcommittees just raise your hands real quick, just so folks, if they want to get involved in some of these subcommittees, I would really encourage you to talk to them after the meeting, and we could really use your input in figuring out how to reach more of those individuals that you talked about. So thank you for that. We are going to move. Yes, sir.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Alexis, Mom, I want to thank you for sharing what you shared. I worked as a park ranger for 6 years, and I was out there, and I saw the sweeps and some of the stuff that took place. I agree with you that I don't know what the practice is now. The sweeps are not humane, they're not a good way to engage and treat people that are living on the streets. Taking your property, I know the system that you talk about, and putting it in a warehouse or a place that you struggle to even get to, let alone get your property, and have people determine what is or what isn't valuable to you, is real to you, and it's your stuff. So I don't want that to be lost on everyone here, whatever, as we move forward. Because not only us, but the city has to do better at addressing how we treat homelessness and how we treat people that are houseless in our community, especially when we're engaging with them, whether it's the police or anybody else, and taking their property. I've witnessed it, and I want to thank you for sharing your story and making it personal so that people here can understand. And if you didn't, it's real. And I don't know if they still have that set up where you have to go to the warehouse or the whatever the heck that thing is. I think I've said from day one, it's not a good system. So I want to acknowledge that I hear you, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you, Sam. We're going to move into our final piece of the meeting, which is our recommendation process. We have 4 recommendations. Elliot's going to present one on a bylaw amendment change on the voting process. I'm going to present one on the recommendation to define define outcomes for substantial compliance. And then we have 2 recommendations from the subcommittee on the people with mental illness. I think what we're going to do is this, in the interest of time, is to have each author read their recommendation, discuss any comments from PSEP on all 4 of those in a row, and then have public comment at the end on any 4 of those recommendations, just so we don't go through a process of present, comment, vote, and all of that. Does that sound fair? Okay, so I'm going to open it up to Elliot. But I will say this also, unless there's any disagreement from PSET members, that we will stay past 8:30 to make sure these get finished, because a lot of hard work was done. This meeting has been very helpful, so if you do have to leave, you can let me know if we don't get to all the votes yet, what you would be voting on these. And with that, I'll turn it over to Elliot.
Thanks, Marciana. So this is a very technical and I think hopefully simple change to the bylaws. It's responding to an issue which came up at the August meeting where we had 8 members on the board, 6 voted in favor of something, 2 abstained, and it didn't pass because the bylaws as they exist now said you need 7 members out of 13, and there were only 8 members there, and that caused a lot of concern amongst community members who felt like the wishes of the board, at least